Is Malakai Makaisson eccentric in Tides of Torment? Since that's a nicer way of saying his hatches are a little loose sometimes. Quick summary. Slayer with a gun. Support Lord for artillery and war machines. Turn 1 Gotrek and Felix. Ulrika later. Massive stacking of boosts to self and army. Anyway, I had a video planned way back and it never happened, so this is covering the character in campaign and is not a faction mechanics guide per se. Not yet. We need a starting point, so let's fire the start gun and proceed. Coming in at 300 upkeep on foot, where he stays. No mounts, that's not his thing. He comes on ultra scale with 4,620 hit points. Armor is 0 because he's a Slayer, so he already has interesting life choices. He brings missile resistance 15% as standard, spell resistance 35% as dwarf standard, leadership 100 and unbreakable, speed 42 and charge speed 48, so he gets around. Melee attack 55 isn't exactly garbage. Attack interval the standard 4 seconds, medium splash size, meaning boar boys on down, and max targets damaged in this fashion of 4. That's not a huge amount. Melee defense 45 is okay-ish. Weapon strength 400 is split base 280 and armor piercing 120. That is a lot of tilt toward base damage. He's not efficient at banging on armor with melee. There is 0 bonus versus a type. Charge bonus is 30 and mass is 1200. And if we were stopping there, this would be pretty bad. But this Slayer has a ranged weapon because he is perfectly sane and entirely well adjusted. That was sarcasm. With ammunition for 30 volleys worth, range 180 is very respectable, comparison damage deemed 643, let's look into what makes that up. Each individual bullet does base 50 and armor piercing 100 per impact. There are 3 shots in a Malakai volley. Reload time is 7 seconds, as the worst number you'll see from him in-game. Total accuracy AT is quadruple the normal starting figure of 20, calibration distance 150 means it's a tiny bit extra inaccurate. Past that. Calibration area 0.8 meters means this would consistently hit characters if total accuracy was 20 instead, but it's 80. And there is a large penetration size and a max targets penned after the first of 4, meaning that targets can be spaced out a fair bit and still be perforated. He is a siege attacker by himself, can hide in forest, and counts as a Slayer for mechanics purposes. As a faction leader, Malakai gets access to his faction's mechanics, gets Gotrek and Felix on turn 1, which is very nice, upkeep minus 15% for artillery and flying machines, and recruit rank plus 3 for the same faction-wide. As a general, Spirit of Grugni, and if I pronounce any of these wrong, sorry, gives him access to the ship summons of that name, access to the Horde-style buildings for it, gives plus 20% missile strength to artillery and flying machines in his army, and has access to the deranged munitions ability, aptly named, 90-second cooldown, 30 seconds duration, 100-meter range, a single unit is buffed and given magical attacks, and plus 50% missile strength on top of what it might already have buffed by Malakai. This skill can be used on any ally or himself able to use missile attacks. While there is nothing different with his blue or red line skills than one might expect, Inquiring Mind as the blue line capstone deserves mention for its plus 10 research rate. Malakai begins with a free pip in Deathblow for plus 20% weapon strength when at 20% health or less. At rank 5, this is auto-replaced by Determined Deathblow for plus 30% weapon strength and plus 10 melee attack when under 20% health. At rank 10, Extremely Daring Deathblow instead is triggered at 25% health or lower for plus 50% weapon strength, plus 10 melee attack, and plus 15% physical resistance. I want to say good stuff, but you're in danger of losing your legendary lord for a while along with his horde, and that's a problem. Good old Brass Lung for plus 25% leadership aura is available rank 4 for 1 pip. At rank 6, Oath of Forging beckons for plus 10% Oath Go from buildings. At rank 8, Lord of the Deeps is 1 pip for leadership plus 6 fighting Skaven without other conditions, and plus 6 leadership when in subterranean siege and underweight intercept battles. Either would stack with the former, you would think. Rank 10 offers Obstinacy for 10% less fatigue buildup for the entire army. Rank 8 allows Rune of Grimnir for 1 pip for plus 10% more missile resistance. able to start his main combat line immediately. Survivalist actually has 2 pips available, one for plus 7% health and 2 for plus 15% health. Always Ready gives reload time reduction 15% at 2 pips, reducing an already low cooldown. Bandolier gives plus 30% ammunition at 2 pips. That's quite a bit. Hard to Hit grants plus 12 melee defense at 2 pips. His defense only starts okay-ish. Ancestral Grudge at 2 gives plus 8% weapon strength generally, and another plus 15% when fighting greenskins. I think they stack. Correct me if not. Cinderblast Cluster Bomb isn't affecting a large area, but the bomb has 10 projectiles, so your coverage is a lot greater that way. Range 75, cooldown 120 seconds, 3 charges. Most of its power is in the explosive damage with flaming attack and much of its damage piercing armor. Thus, it can be relied upon to thin ranks of Chosen a bit, and any ice troll in the way will have a bad day. It's a bonus treated as such. Blade Shield adds another plus 12 melee defense at 2 pips. Piercing Shot grants missile strength plus 15% and explosive missile damage plus 15%. I reiterate, the normal shots from Malakai are piercing bullets, but the cluster bomb will benefit from the latter. Gunsight is 1 pip for plus 10% range. Consider this mandatory. Relentless at 2 pips, slaps on plus 15% more speed. That's great because, like I said, no mounts. The capstone is Old-Fashioned Deadly Onslaught, plus 60% charge bonus and plus 25% weapon strength for 31 seconds for Malakai, 90-second cooldown after. That's to say, it's good for desperate measures. At rank 6, he can begin a mini line that's all rank locked. The first pip goes into Tapestry of Oaths, granting weapon strength plus 10% for all Slayer units in his army, including Goblin Hewers, and missile strength plus 10% for Goblin Hewers and Slayer Pirates, as in he actually makes them more useful. At rank 10, Ritualistic Scarring gives missile resistance plus 15% for all Slayer units, including the Hewers, and that's good because shooting Slayers is one of the best ways to deal with them. It remains good, just slower. At rank 14, Slayers, To Me gives casualty replenishment plus 10% for Slayer units and upkeep minus 10% for the same, which is also good because you expect the meat grinder to be hard on them. This helps you maintain strategic momentum. For the real personal line, starting rank 12, Inventor begins things off. This unlocks Master Engineer recruitment in all provinces, increases hero cap for them by plus 2, and pumps up research rate by 10 points. Slayer offers upkeep minus 10% for Slayer units, weapon strength plus 10% for Slayer units, and missile strength plus 10% for Slayer units that actually have them. These buffs are faction-wide, Confederation safe, and most certainly will double up with the previously mentioned Malakai army buffs. Tinkerer gives reload time reduction 10% to artillery and flying war machines, and casualty replenishment plus 10% for the same. The sort of bonus Vampire Coast gives its zombie units. This one's for Malakai's army only. Artillery Master gives Malakai himself ammunition plus 20% and reload time reduction 10%, which stacks with his combat line and gives the Artillery Master passive, granting plus 30 accuracy and plus 10 reload skill, which I think is 1-to-1 reload time reduction these days to any friendly artillery or war machine in a 55-meter radius. There is no condition attached beyond this, so allied units, gyrocopters, it should all work. Architect gives a minus 20% cost reduction for military support buildings, minus 1 to construction time for the same, and minus 20% for the cost of his own horde buildings generally. The other two should be Confederation safe. I guess that'd be the gyrocopter building. Master Engineer gives range plus 10% to Malakai himself, armor-piercing missile damage plus 20 flat points, so the default per bullet goes from 100 to 120, and upgrades deranged munitions so that it affects a 35-meter radius from where you pointed at, not just a single unit. Very nice, since that's magical attack, plus 50% missile strength, and there's nothing that stops him from including himself in the radius. For legendary items, buckle in. For the Glaive Gun, this is obtained with the Dreadquake Mortar legendary quest from Malakai's own campaign. Therefore, since it's not a traditional legendary item quest, he may not be able to get it if he's been confederated. Bonus versus large plus 15, where he does not get one otherwise, range plus 10%, and armor-piercing missile damage plus 50%. So, 100 goes to 150 per bullet. That's quite strong, but buffs only him. Makaisson's Persuader, available as a quest from rank 8, would give artillery and war machine casualty replenishment plus 8%, melee attack plus 5, weapon strength, that's melee, plus 20%, which is a lot, and the namesake ability, which is really 3 uses of restock with 120-second cooldown by another name, except for 2 twists. 1. Only friendly artillery or war machines can be targeted. 2. For 17 seconds, Malakai heals himself for 1% a second. I called a 10-second benefit for Elspeth Strong, though she gets on a dragon mount and he does not. Still a huge safety factor for making him last longer before the final frenzy preceding being wounded. The Eye of Grugni, quest starting rank 12, offers post-battle loot plus 15%, ambush defense chance plus 15%, so good against Skaven and Beastmen. Reload time reduction 10% for himself, so let's not bury the lead. That's what, minus 30% reload time from all boosts combined. When you start it at 7 seconds. The namesake passive is 55 meter range, self is included. Anyone with a missile attack is range plus 10% and base and armor piercing missile damage plus 10%. That is very strong in addition to all the rest. There is a set bonus, and it applies from the Persuader and the Eyes, not the Glaive Gun. The bonus gives upkeep minus 5% for artillery and war machines. The Planner Tooltip didn't say if that's Lore's army only. Also, research rate plus 10. Also, missile strength plus 10% for Malakai himself. So how do we use Malakai Makaisson, Slayer Engineer Extraordinaire? Since it's a horde mechanic, and every benefit is spelled out in black and green in campaign, let's just say generally that summoning his Thunder Barge starts useful and proceeds to a level of very strong, even though it was reined in not to be as overpowered as it was. It's a force multiplier, so what you need to do is build the force it multiplies. The fact you have Gotrek and Felix from turn 1 and can get Ulrika later gets you started off nicely, but an army based on Slayers and War Machines has obvious weaknesses. The infantry is still 0 armor unless you get non-Slayers. You may want some non-Slayers for toughness for that reason, but you want to play to your strengths when possible. Malakai, for all his boosting of his own cause, is still best understood as a support lord for a hard-hitting army, but just as bone and muscle needs cartilage to connect them. Don't be afraid of bringing some Coilers or Thunderers to cooperate. It's another thing for him to buff as you push further. It's never a question of using them or gyrocopters, it's the fact gyrocopters firing at a target at the same time as either of those other unit types improves your results. Overwhelming foes and breaking them, even if undead or demonic, is going to carry you a long way. Note that Malakai himself does not use magical attacks unless buffed, so just keep that in mind vaguely. More to the point, you're not just given Gotrek and Felix for thematic purposes. He can really use the hardcore melee assistance. It takes pressure off him personally and lets him focus on doing the most good using his own methods. Just keep in mind that the enemy always gets a vote, and no matter how much of a crack shot he is, a necromancer hiding in a blob is really hard to hit. You need ways to thin that blob and separate the heroes from it. Also, just to be clear, Iron Drake Flames count as a missile weapon. There are counters, but that unit is the polar opposite of your Slayer units in good ways and offers options. I hadn't mentioned them specifically, but Slayer buffs help Doom Seekers, so you should have a balance of anti-large and anti-infantry tools to work with. And Ulrika can cast spells, which is something Dwarfs usually can't get away with. So there's that. Of course, Thunder Barges are kind of nice for destroying blobs in some circumstances. That's about it for the character himself. My impression of this campaign is pretty good, but I have to divide and conquer information to make it manageable, and so this is where I'm ending this portion. Take care, and have fun blasting big holes in greenskin hordes. Great stress relief.